Alright, welcome to part 3 of how to build a mini arcade build. First things first, if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, the links will be in the description. Starting out, we're going to drill 2 holes for the admin button on the front part, which I call the front admin control panel. It's for start and select. You can use a 1 1/8 bit. You can use a Forstner bit as pictured right now, or you can use a hole saw bit pictured now, or like I'm using a spade bit, which doesn't work that great, as you can tell by the struggulations. That's why I said struggulations that I'm having here, but I did get the job done. And then you just want to sand the holes out a little bit, make it clean, pop the buttons in to see if they fit. They do fit. Pro tip here, on the part 2 you'll see a small attachment block that we attach the bottom to the front panel with. You have to go either to the left or the right of that because the buttons will barely clear that. See, there's one button. I'm about to hold it up to show you what I'm talking about here. I got both holes drilled. That'll be starting select, and you see that right there. You'll make sure you go on the left or right side of that. Well, now that most of the buttons and the base unit is completed, what you're going to do is you're going to sand the entire unit to your satisfaction. Not my satisfaction. I sanded mine to my satisfaction. You sand yours to your satisfaction. I don't know what I'm talking about here. Well, anyway, as you can see, I'm just hand sanding it. I have a little palm sander, but I'm not sure that's necessary with this 1/4 inch thick MDF. And I'm not trying to get the unit completely on the sides. It doesn't really matter. You're going to put artwork most of the places. I just try to sand the corners down a little bit, and then here I'm getting ready to paint, so I clean it very good. I'm using my little air hose here with my compressor to clean all the dirt and the little stuff off, and then I wipe it down, because before you paint you want it to be clean as a whistle. And then I'm using white paint here. I will show you the description of the best paint that I found. If I was you, I would use Valspar. It coated very well and didn't take as much. I think this is primer and paint, and the first coat you want to go real light, probably lighter than I did here, until you slap a couple coats on this sucker. I think 2 or 3 coats will do it. I sand in between coats until I'm satisfied completely, then I move on. Now that painting is complete, let's move on to the control panel button layout. But first I want to mention that I did screw 4 holes into the control panel, and I countersunk them so that they will screw into the slats that hold the control panel down. And here I'm showing what I did to make a circle around the buttons, and I just did my own little layout here. I would go a little bit closer together unless you have humongous paws. You can also print these templates out on the internet, but I just went ahead and freehanded it and eyeballed it. Try to get every button the same distance apart, top and bottom. And here I am at the drill press. I'm using my shop vac to collect the dust. It does help with these. In this scene right here, I remember my handle on my drill press was loose and it came loose in my hand. And I was like, what the hell just happened? But you want to drill all 6 holes. Take your time with this MDF, especially if it's real thin. You just want to go in there slow. Depends on what kind of equipment you have. If you don't have the best equipment like me, you have to do what you can to get it done. But here I am, just making it right here. Bam. Oh, there goes the handle. Hey, sometimes you gotta work with what you got, right? And after you're satisfied and you drill all 6 holes, there's the markings that I did to get the separation. Test fitting the buttons, make sure they all work. They fit like a charm. Now, moving on to the joystick mount. As you can see, it's turned sideways. Normally you would mount it vertical, but with this limited space, you can't mount it vertical, so you had to turn it sideways. It works just as fine, trust me. So I lined it up, drilled 4 holes, and drilled a center hole. That center hole, you probably, I think it's a 3/8 bit. Then I painted my screws that I'm gonna attach white. Those are my joystick screws. Now it's time to hop on the bandsaw, cut some plexiglass. Oh, the bandsaw. It can be very therapeutic for some people just hearing that noise. It kind of does a little bit for me. But then when you cut the width 11.5, a little bit less than 11.5 to get the plexiglass to fit in there just right, you measure the top. What you want, this is hard to explain, but what you want for the plexiglass, you want it to rest on top of the control panel support. So you mount your control panel right there flush with the front, and then you take your plexiglass like I'm showing here, and it goes all the way from the bottom right there where it mounts the control panel all the way to the top where the speakers are mounted. And you can either tape them, but I'm going to show you a different way, the way I mount it. So that's the plexiglass installed right there. And what I did was I put the plexiglass in place, taped it up to hold it in place with painter's tape, and then I put a piece of wood right up against the plexiglass and the speaker mount. So it worked out flawlessly right here, and I just clamped it together, put a little wood glue on there, clamped it together, let it dry overnight, and it'll hold for a long time. You could also just tape the plexiglass to the speaker panel from the inside, but I like this method a little bit better. So after mounting the plexiglass and getting it set up, it's time to move on to the monitor mount. And this is the best way that I found to mount these monitors. First, you want to put 2 little pieces of oak or pine or any kind of little wood that you have lying around, another 1/4 inch piece, cut just like this, straight on both sides, and I glue them, and then I went back and screwed them down using some washers so to make sure I didn't go through to the other side. As you can see right here, both side panels are on. I painted them on the inside, and that's what you're going to mount your monitor to, because we're about to make a monitor support. For these eBay monitors, there's no VESA mounts like you would on a normal bar top, so you have to be crafty and come up with some unique ways. If anybody else has a better way of mounting these monitors, I would like to see them, because I'm always trying to come up with better ideas. But this is what I do. So basically what I'm doing is I'm sandwiching the monitor in, and then I'm going to put double-sided sticky tape to hold it to the plywood on the bottom there. So I'm gluing these 2 little panels. These are for the bottom. And you also have a ribbon cable. That's why the gap's there in the middle. And you also have a little power cable. You have to cut it out. I used a little saw and just cut the parts out. You'll see what I'm talking about coming up soon. Final product. Isn't she just beautiful? Yeah, it's a little rusty, a little shabby work here, but it gets the job done. Now we're gonna paint this black, because you don't want to see inside the cab and you don't want to see this wood. So just go ahead and paint it black, so it makes it nice and dark inside the cabinet when you see it from a certain angle, you know, through the plexiglass, monitor bezel, whatever you want to call it. You don't want to be seeing this wood here, so go ahead and throw a little coat of black on it. Doesn't take much, you don't have to be perfect. This will very rarely be seen, only by you probably. So let's knock that out, move on to the next step. Earlier I said I would use a thicker piece of wood for this step, and this is the reason why. Because if I was using a thicker piece of wood, I wouldn't have to do what I'm doing now. I'm just doubling up on this monitor support mount, whatever you want to call it, because I want to add all my accessories, my Raspberry Pi, my amp, my control board for the monitor here, everything to this, but I want to attach it with screws, and I don't want the screws to go through to the other side and hit my monitor. So what I'm doing, or my screen I should say, what I'm doing is I'm just adding some thickness to it. So if you would have started out with a, let's say, a 1/2 inch piece of wood for the monitor, you would be fine. So on the next one, that's what I'll definitely do. So you won't have to do this if you take the alternate route and just use a 1/2 inch thick piece of wood to make that monitor bezel right there. And that way you can attach all your components to the back there very, very simply, and use longer screws to get a better stable connection, tighter fit and everything. And here is where I'm talking about the double-sided sticky tape. You can buy this at Walmart, anywhere. Holds up for me. I just put one. I should have put one in the middle. I put one on top, left, right, and bottom. I should have put one in the middle just for support. But I think this will hold. You're not going to be turning the arcade upside down really anyway, unless you're just transporting it, and I haven't had any issues thus far. So cross your fingers. I'm crossing mine right now. You can't tell, but I really am. And here we are. I'm just placing it down. A little real slowly, turning it over, make sure it doesn't fall out on camera. And there's all my components. I will go into further detail with that. And now it's time to spray paint the monitor for the bezel. And I just go ahead and attach the bezel where it's going to be. And I put the monitor in. I'm using little L brackets for the monitor. And that's how I'm holding it in place. I actually just got it sitting up there right now. And then I'll just mark the 4 dots, tape them off, and then use a razor blade to make straight lines. And here we go. We spray paint it. My camera goofed up right here and didn't record the rest of it. So this is all for this part. Stay tuned for part 4, and then part 5 we'll finish this up and you'll see the finished product. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.